Hello, friends. I came from a small town, and even though it was a small town, it was a very diverse town. It was big factories, kind of natural resource sector jobs. People from all over the world would come to live in this small town to work in that factory. We had Portuguese, we had French, we had Pakistani, we had East Indian, we had First Nations, we had white people, we had German, French, or English, or Dutch, and all living in the same town. An incredible kind of sample of what multiculturalism should be. But even though it was a small town, we would see kind of these fracture areas inside the town where that's where the French people live, and that's where the German people lived. That's where all the Pakistani people would live. Well, the Portuguese people kind of had this whole neighborhood focus, And the reason why is because people of different ethnic backgrounds naturally try to congeal into a homogeneous unit because they're able to do things like speak the same language. And that is a huge, like a security net, to know you've got kind of this community of people that we share certain cultural practices and knowledge and appreciations and memories. It's who we are. It's our background. It's how we grew up. To be able to share that with other people is very attractive. And so the whole concept of multiculturalism, of different cultures intermingling with one another without putting up their own little walls, but whether it's from the United States to Mexico or from your property to your neighbor. It's the same thing. How high do you want to put your fence? How badly do you want to block your neighbor out? And so it kind of makes sense to me if you're going to be looking at a multiculturalism society, is that the idea of it is one thing, but the practicality of how it actually templates itself is totally different. And you have these ghettos. You have this neighborhood. You have that neighborhood. You have this neighborhood. This is the Italian neighborhood. This is the French neighborhood. This is the Serbian neighborhood. Little tiny dynasties within a greater political picture. And it's very easy, especially with Quebec and Canada. They kind of consider themselves their own neighborhood, an entire province. It's just this tribal nature of humanity, and it is one of the biggest challenges that we face when it comes to multiculturalism in our society. Now, we here in Canada are now in the situation where we're looking at multilegalism, where depending on what your ethnic background is, you're going to have different rules will be applied to you. It certainly happens with First Nations people in Canada. Let's be honest, I'm not being racist, I'm just identifying that as a real part of our reality as Canadians. So First Nations people don't pay taxes like the remainder of Canadians. A lot of Canadians think that's pretty unfair. But anyway, when you start getting into multiculturalism, and because they have a different kind of cultural background, we're going to apply a different law to them just to make sure that they don't feel like their rights are being infringed. Well, no. Either you're a Canadian and you abide by the same laws, or you're not a Canadian. Now, when people go through the Canadian citizenship ceremony and they say those words and they make that oath, either they believe it or they don't. And if you're just saying those words to get in, then you weren't honest when you said those words and you made that oath. You are going to uphold Canadian laws. If you're in Canada, you abide by Canadian laws. You don't try to circumvent the legal process to twist Canadian laws into the same laws of the country that you just escaped from. That is a form of warfare. And Canadians know it when we see it. Free speech in Canada is under attack. And unless everybody out there starts to pay attention to this, we're in real trouble. It's my recommendation, folks. Ralph the Drew signing off. Hope you're all doing well, and as always, Maple Leaf up.